Have you ever caught yourself whispering the same excuse over and over, like a broken record that won't stop playing? You know it steals your time, dulls your spirit, and yet it lingers, wrapping itself around you like a chain you can't quite see. Complaints too, soft at first, then louder, until they become the soundtrack of a life unlived. I've seen it in myself, and I've seen it in others. The quiet poison of self-pity, killing not with fire, but with slow decay. Epictetus had no patience for it. He knew that every moment spent in blame or excuse was a moment surrendered. His words don't comfort, they confront. They strike like iron against iron, shattering the illusions we build to protect our weakness. These meditations are not gentle advice, they are weapons forged in hardship, meant to cut through the fog that keeps you small. Imagine hearing a man who was born a slave, who lost nearly everything but his mind, and still rose to become one of the greatest teachers of freedom. When he speaks, you feel the weight of someone who has already endured what you fear most. His words don't tell you what to do, they show you what you are capable of when excuses fall silent. So the question is this: will you carry those chains of I can't and not yet? Or will you take up the hammer of truth and break them? Stay with me. These 12 meditations might change the way you walk through your own life. As we step into the first chapter, picture this. The room grows quiet, the phone screen goes dark, and for a split second you feel that sting in your chest, the fear of being left behind. That silence feels heavier than it should, like an invisible chain tightening around your ribs. And in that moment, you realize something terrifying. If that person were to walk away, if that familiar voice vanished, would you still feel whole? Or would you crumble? Now imagine your life as a chair with only one leg. You balance as best you can, shaky but hopeful, trusting that the one holding that leg will keep steady. Yet deep down, you know the truth. The moment they move, grow tired, or decide to leave, the whole chair collapses. And there you are, on the ground, broken by something you thought was your foundation. Do you really want to sit your whole life on something that fragile? Epictetus did not waste words on comfort. He told us plainly, why then do you worry about things not under your control? Take responsibility for what is yours and let go of the rest. That isn't poetry, that's a sword. A reminder that peace cannot depend on someone else's presence or their quick reply, or their staying when they choose to leave. What is yours? Your response, your decision, your way of living, nothing more, nothing less. Think about our modern world. Someone refreshing Instagram every 5 seconds, heart racing for a blue thumbs up, as if that tiny symbol could decide their worth. Epictetus would probably raise an eyebrow and ask, are you truly placing your happiness in the hands of a pixel? That sharp humor is a mirror. Depending on the opinions of others, is the perfect recipe for endless frustration. It is not just stoic ink on parchment. Dr. Gabor Mate, who studied decades of human suffering, concluded that much of our pain comes from emotional dependency. The child who grows up thinking they need approval to feel whole becomes the adult who searches endlessly for someone to fill their emptiness. But the hole doesn't close, it grows wider. The more we chase attention, the hungrier the void becomes. You've felt it. Coming home after a hard day, reaching for your phone, staring at an empty screen. No message, no call, and suddenly the mind spins. Do they not care about me? Did they forget me? Why didn't they reach out? But the truth is, you were not abandoned. You were given an opportunity to sit with yourself, to cook a meal in silence, to read, to train, to play music, to discover that being alone does not mean being empty. Solitude, if you embrace it, becomes a gym. Every rep is a moment where you learn to be with yourself without fear. So how do you build the extra legs of that chair, the ones that keep you steady when people come and go? Start small. Give yourself 10 minutes of solitude each day. No phone, no TV, no noise, just you and your thoughts. At first it feels unbearable, like your own mind wants to run, but slowly the discomfort turns into calm. That calm grows, and one day you look up and realize you are not afraid anymore. Another way, start validating your own decisions. Every time you choose, ask yourself, am I doing this for me or to please someone else? That single question is a filter. It strips away the weight of expectations you were never meant to carry. And with each honest answer, you step closer to independence. Here's a challenge, one that will test your courage. Take yourself out. Go to the movies alone and enjoy it. Sit at your favorite restaurant without waiting for company. Spend an afternoon at a cafe writing down your thoughts. At first it feels awkward, as if the whole world is watching. But stay, breathe. Keep doing it until the strangeness dissolves into strength. Soon it becomes a ritual, a quiet celebration of your own company. It is like dating someone who never betrays you, yourself. And here is the paradox. When you learn to be okay without anyone, you stop fearing loss. You stop grasping. You stop begging for permanence in a world that offers none. And the strange, beautiful thing is this. When you no longer need people desperately, the relationships that remain become freer, lighter, more genuine. They are no longer lifelines you cling to. They are companions you choose. This is where Epictetus's words stop being ancient echoes and start becoming armor, a shield against the emptiness, against dependence, against the fragile illusion that your worth rests in someone else's hands. Because the moment you discover that your peace does not depend on anyone else, you taste the only freedom that cannot be stolen. So stand firm, learn to walk alone without trembling, because when you stop fearing solitude, you stop fearing life. And that, my friend, is where true freedom begins. And as we move deeper into the next meditation, keep this in your heart. Once you can stand without clinging, you are ready to face the shadows of the past and the illusions of the future. For the next lesson will demand not just independence, but presence. Moving into the second chapter, imagine this. The lights are out, the room is still, and suddenly your mind flickers on like a projector. Scenes begin to play without your permission. There you are again, sitting in that meeting, repeating the words that stumbled out of your mouth. The awkward joke that fell flat, the gesture you're certain looked foolish. And without thinking, you hit rewind. Again and again. Watching the same bad film of your own mistakes, as if torment were entertainment. But it doesn't stop there. Sometimes the projector doesn't look back, it looks forward. You start crafting arguments that haven't happened. You rehearse a fight with your partner, preparing for a storm that might never come. You even invent clever comebacks for words that were never spoken. And you carry this cinema on your shoulders, dragging it from room to room, while real life slips quietly past you. Marcus Aurelius saw this in his own time. In his meditations, he wrote, "You will never live yesterday again. The future has not yet arrived. Live the present with justice and self-control." He wasn't writing poetry for comfort. He was writing medicine for a restless mind. Yesterday is dead. Tomorrow does not exist. The only soil you can plant in is now. Waste it, and you waste your life. Epictetus sharpened the blade even further. It is not things that upset us, but our opinions about them. The problem is not that you made a mistake yesterday, it's that you keep punishing yourself for it today. The problem is not the arrival of tomorrow, it's that you already filled it with fear before it even showed up. Time itself doesn't crush you. You do, when you turn it into a weight you were never meant to carry. I know this spiral well. Picture a story. You're in a meeting. Your boss asks about a project. Nervously you say, "Yes, we'll deliver next week," not realizing the deadline was that same afternoon. The room goes quiet. A colleague corrects you. Your boss frowns. And though the moment is brief, the sting follows you home. That night, sleep vanishes. Your mind loops through the mistake, tearing you apart with every replay. Why didn't I double-check? Why did I open my mouth? In your head, everyone now thinks you're incompetent. But the truth, by tomorrow they've probably forgotten. Only you are still chained to the projector. So how do you break the loop? First, by moving your body. The next time you catch yourself spiraling, stand up. Walk to another room. Change your position. Send a signal to your mind. The reel has ended. Then, practice the discipline of presence. Cook a meal without your phone. Listen to someone with full attention. Pour yourself into one task as if nothing else exists. This is how you train the muscle of being here. The more you do it, the stronger you become. And when it's the future that strangles you, reach for paper. Write down one single action you can take today, just one, because the future is never solved in your head. It is built step by step in the ground beneath your feet. Every action is a brick, and every brick laid today shapes tomorrow. Think of it this way. Each time you relive a painful memory, it's like holding your hand over a flame. The burn hurts every time, but you don't pull away. Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius would both tell you the same thing. Remove your hand. Stop fighting with shadows. Return to this moment. Here, and only here, can you breathe. Here, you can act. Here, you can change. I want you to feel this deeply. The real playing in your head is not real. The arguments you've rehearsed, the shame you've replayed, the futures you've scripted, they are phantoms, and phantoms cannot hurt you unless you invite them in. When you stop feeding them, they vanish. What remains is the steady clarity of the present. So ask yourself now, what's gripping you tighter, the ghosts of memory or the fog of worry? Write it down, say it aloud, because the first step to freedom is naming your prison. And if you want something simple to carry with you, whisper this to yourself. Today, I turn off the movie in my head. This is where Epictetus's meditations hit like thunder. They don't offer comfort. They jolt you awake. They remind you that strength comes not from replaying what's gone, nor rehearsing what isn't, but from standing where you are. Once you free yourself from that endless loop, your mind steadies, clarity returns, inner strength grows. And when you can finally silence the projector, you discover something the Stoics always knew. The present is not just all you have, it's all you'll ever need. This is where we leave the shadows of time and step forward. For the next meditation, we'll test not only your ability to be present, but your courage to set down the burdens that were never yours to carry. Entering the third chapter, picture this with me. You're walking down the street, earbuds in, maybe thinking about dinner or humming along to a song. Out of nowhere, someone rips a heavy street sign from the ground and dumps it into your arms. You don't resist, you don't drop it, you carry it. Onto the subway, where you block 3 seats. Into the office, where you bump every desk. Even into the shower, where the sign leans against the wall as you struggle to wash. Absurd, isn't it? And yet, this is what so many of us do every day, dragging around dramas that were never ours to begin with. Now pause and ask yourself, How many invisible signs are you holding right now? Maybe it's a friend's relationship storm that kept you awake last night. Maybe it's your co-worker's rant about the boss that somehow left you resenting a man who's never wronged you. That's the danger of absorbing what isn't yours. You begin to bleed for wounds that were never cut into your skin. Seneca would laugh at our foolishness. Imagine him trapped in a modern WhatsApp group with 20 people, one of them posting complaints every morning. My boss did this, my boss did that. Seneca wouldn't waste a week scrolling through the poison. He'd leave the group with a single line: life is too short for other people's drama. And he'd be right. The choice is not between being kind or being cold. The choice is between being free or being drowned. We forget this truth because we confuse being supportive with being a sponge. Nedra Glover Tawwab, a modern voice on boundaries, calls it what it is: emotional absorption. We think carrying everyone's baggage makes us noble, but it doesn't. It makes us exhausted. It fills our backpack with stones that were never ours to lift, and then we wonder why our shoulders ache. Think of the times you nodded politely at the endless complaints of a colleague. You told yourself you were being a good friend, a good listener, but quietly their bitterness seeped into you. Without meaning to, you started to see the world through their resentment. Soon, you were angry at a boss who never even crossed your path. That's the danger. Hatred can be inherited, not by blood, but by proximity. The Stoics offer a sharper medicine. Epictetus gave us one line that can cut through the heaviest fog. Some things are up to us, others are not. Say it aloud. Let it sink. When you convince yourself that someone else's burden belongs to you, you chain yourself to a misery that was never meant to be yours. Drop it. That's not selfishness. That's sanity. Picture a different choice. The next time your uncle begins his familiar monologue, you listen for a moment, then guide the conversation gently elsewhere. The next time your co-worker unloads her latest heartbreak, you say calmly but firmly, "I hear you, but I need to change the subject for a while." This is not cruelty. This is self-preservation. Even the strongest walls crumble if they never stop absorbing rain. And if someone drains you every single time you see them, space the meetings further apart. Protect the ground where your peace grows, because your time and energy are not an endless well for others to draw from. Boundaries are not walls that shut people out. They are gates that protect the garden of your soul. Here's a challenge for you. The next time someone drops their invisible street sign into your arms, don't drag it home. Do something right then to set it down. Take a walk without your phone. Write their words on a scrap of paper and tear it to shreds. Or take a single deep breath and repeat the Stoic mantra: "This is not mine." That small act severs the chain before it locks. I've seen what happens when people live without these boundaries. They burn out. They lose sight of their own battles. They spend so much time fighting shadows that when real storms arrive, they're too weak to stand. But when you begin to drop what isn't yours, clarity returns. Your hands are free again, your energy sharpens, and suddenly the real challenges, the ones you are meant to face, don't feel impossible anymore. This is the heart of Stoic practice: to refuse the weight of illusions. To recognize that compassion doesn't mean drowning with someone, it means standing firm enough to offer a hand without being pulled under. It means listening without absorbing. It means remembering, as Marcus Aurelius said, that you have power over your mind, not outside events. And other people's storms, those belong to them, not you. So I ask you again, how many signs are you still carrying? How much of your exhaustion is built from problems that were never yours? Let them go already. Because living light isn't just a nice idea, It's the only way to go far. And as we step into the next meditation, hold on to this clarity. For once you learn to drop the unnecessary, you'll have the strength to face what is truly yours, the work, the discipline, and the victories that no one else can carry for you. Advancing to the 4th chapter, let me put it plain. If you are waiting for motivation to carry you, you will wait forever. Motivation is that unreliable friend who texts, "I'm on my way," while still searching for their shoes. You can't build a life on that. What you can build on is action. Quiet, steady, stubborn action. That is where real change begins. Think of success not as a gift wrapped in ribbons falling from the sky, but as a wall, brick by brick, day by day. From the outside, people see the finished wall and say, "He's lucky, it came easy," but you know better. Every brick was laid when no one was clapping, when you were tired, when you wished you were anywhere else. The truth is hard. Success is built in silence. Here's a story. Before Stephen King became one of the most read authors in the world, he spent his days scrubbing laundry. At night, on a tiny desk in his kitchen, he wrote his first manuscript. In despair, he threw it in the trash. He thought it was worthless. But his wife pulled it out, encouraged him to send it in. That book was published. It changed his life. What changed everything wasn't luck. It was the decision to sit down and write when there was no motivation, no reward, no one cheering. You've felt this too. January comes and you sign up for the gym with fire in your chest. The first days, you're unstoppable. By the second week, the fire fades. By February, you're gone. Why? Because you were in love with the spark, not the discipline. That is the line between dreaming of success and actually building it. The staying after the spark burns out. Epictetus understood this perfectly. He said, "You don't become a champion without sweating. Results are never yours to control. But sweat, action, discipline, that is always yours. This is the real power, to choose to train, to study, to work even when no one's watching, to act without needing a push, to build when no one believes." So how do you do it? You start small. 5 minutes. Read for 5. Write for 5. Move your body for 5. Do not underestimate the power of repetition. Habits are not forged in grand sprints, but in small steps walked over and over again. And beware the great thief of progress, distraction. You sit down to work, phone beside you. You promise yourself you'll only check it once, but one glance becomes a dancing dog video. Then 20 minutes of comments you don't even care about. And the work, the thing that matters, lies abandoned. Control isn't found in wishing, it's found in structure. If you want focus, leave the phone in another room. Your mind cannot be strong if it's chained to a buzzing device every 2 minutes. Shift your perspective. Stop measuring progress only by trophies. Start measuring it by the bricks you lay today. Maybe you didn't run 10 kilometers, but you ran 3. Yesterday, you ran 2. That's growth. Maybe you didn't finish your book, but you wrote 1 more page. That's 1 more brick on your wall. Success is not a finish line far away. It's the quiet act of refusing to quit today. Even modern psychology backs this. Research on habits shows that small wins create momentum. One completed action today makes tomorrow easier. And little by little, without fanfare, you change. You go from wanting to write to being a writer, from wanting to train to being an athlete, from wanting to grow to being the one who is already doing it. Think of it like muscle. You don't go to the gym once and wake up an Olympian. You go, you sweat, you fail, you return. And one day, without noticing, you are stronger. Endurance grows, clarity sharpens. This is how everything is built. Consistency first, results later. And so we return to the shield Epictetus handed us. Do what depends on you. Let go of the rest. That is the heart of Stoicism. It isn't philosophy on paper, it's discipline in your hands. Because in life, motivation fades. Applause dies. Even inspiration disappears. But action remains. Discipline remains. That is what you control. So hold on to this truth. Success will not arrive because you feel inspired today. It will be built from bricks of silent labor, steady and unseen. And that steady strength is worth more than any therapy built on excuses. Work first. Results will follow. And here's the victory. When you choose to act without waiting for feeling, you lift your shield against laziness, against doubt, against despair. And with that shield, my friend, no wall is unbreakable. From here, let's carry this strength forward. For the next meditation will show that if you don't seize control of your life, someone else surely will. Let's step into the 5th chapter and imagine a scene that sounds like a fable but cuts closer to our lives than we dare admit. A donkey wanders through the countryside. He is tired. He is hungry. He finds 2 piles of hay, equal in size, equal in distance, one on his right, one on his left. All he has to do is choose. Yet he cannot. He looks right, then left, then back again. Doubt gnaws at him. What if the one on the left is sweeter? What if the one on the right is softer? Minutes pass. Hours pass. And in the cruelest irony, he dies of hunger while surrounded by abundance. It sounds absurd, doesn't it? To starve in the presence of plenty. And yet, how many times have you been that donkey? How often have you let indecision paralyze you until opportunities slipped away? How many times have you allowed others to choose for you while you stood silent? We think not choosing frees us from risk, but here's the brutal truth. Not choosing is also a choice. And almost always, it's the worst one. This is where the Stoic lesson strikes deep. Epictetus spoke of freedom, and he did not mean a life without rules or limits. He meant the deeper power, the ability to choose for yourself. And he knew exactly what it was to live without that freedom. Born a slave in Rome, his days, his words, even his silences were commanded by others. Later, as a philosopher, he was exiled by Emperor Domitian. He could have broken under the weight of choices stolen from him. Instead, he left for Nicopolis, founded his school, and proved a greater truth. Even when you cannot choose what is imposed on you, you can always choose your response. That is mastery. That is freedom. As he said, no one is free unless they are master of themselves. So I ask you plainly, are you the master of your life, or are you letting others steer it? Are you holding the reins, or are you dragged around by urgencies that are not yours? Every day the clock ticks. And if you do not choose your direction, someone else will. But you don't need a perfect map of your entire life to begin. Start with one day. Take a sheet of paper and write how you want just a single, ordinary day to look. What time will you rise? What one activity strengthens you? Who do you want to share time with? What one thing do you want to learn? That simple sketch is already a map. And without a map, any road feels acceptable, even when it carries you nowhere. Bring the vision down to earth. Don't just say, I want to be healthier. That is too vague. It evaporates like smoke. Instead, say, I will train 3 times a week. I will cook at home instead of ordering out. Don't just say, I want to be happier. Decide, I will stop scrolling an hour before bed and write 3 honest lines in my journal. That is a choice. That is direction. That is power. And don't be fooled into thinking one plan is enough for all time. Life changes. You change. Plans must change too. Just as you check the GPS when the road shifts, check your own map as seasons move. What mattered last year may not matter now, and that is not failure, that is growth. Planning is not about imprisoning yourself on a single path. It is about giving yourself direction in the midst of noise. Here is the hidden treasure. When you live by your own plan, clarity arrives. A clarity no amount of complaining or self-pity will ever give you. Compare two moments. One life spent muttering, "No one understands me. Nothing ever works out." Another life where you look at your page and say, "This is what I choose to do today." The difference is night and day. The second life belongs to you. That clarity becomes your shield against distraction, against manipulation, against being pulled into paths that are not your own. The Stoics remind us, strength is not in waiting for permission, it is in choosing. Your life is your responsibility. Epictetus would not want you to drift as a passenger. He would want you to take the reins. So here is my challenge. What part of your life have you abandoned to someone else's hands? What decision have you delayed until the years carried it away? Write it down, share it, and then take one step this week, just one, to reclaim it. You are not alone in this. We are a community of minds training daily, refusing to live as donkeys dying in abundance, refusing to hand our lives to others. Plan your days, even in small strokes, and you will see a path begin to open. A path that truly belongs to you. Do you dare to begin today? Because the moment you choose, truly choose, the fear of the wrong road loses its teeth. And from that moment, you live as a master of yourself, not a victim of indecision. And as we advance toward the next meditation, carry this forward. The one who learns to steer his own course will no longer waste his strength on storms he cannot control. For the next truth will strike even deeper. It is not the weight of the world that breaks you, but the energy you waste trying to hold what was never yours. At this stage, let's confront the weight you carry when you battle what was never yours to control. Picture the long nights, staring at the ceiling, body exhausted but mind thrashing. You toss and turn, playing scenes that never belong to your hands. Tomorrow's traffic, a colleague's opinion, whether the interview goes well, 1,000 spinning wheels grinding down your peace. And after all that noise, nothing changes. You only lose sleep. You only bleed energy into shadows. It is like punching water. The harder you strike, the weaker you become, and the water remains unchanged. Now imagine two buckets placed before you. In one, you place everything that is truly yours, your choices, your effort, your discipline. In the other, you place the rest, the weather, other people's moods, the gossip of strangers. Common sense would tell you to pour your energy into the first bucket, the one that can actually fill your life. Yet most of us spend day after day emptying ourselves into the second. And when we feel drained, when we collapse in frustration, we call life unfair. The truth is harder. We wasted ourselves on what was never ours to hold. This isn't only Stoic wisdom, it is science. Stanford researchers studied something called the locus of control. They found that people who believe they hold responsibility within an internal locus are calmer, stronger, more resilient. But those who hand control to fate, to luck, to others, an external locus, live heavier. More anxiety, more stress, more helplessness. Does that sound familiar? If everything depends on what is outside you, what can you do but worry? Marcus Aurelius cut through this fog with a single sentence. If something external afflicts you, the pain does not come from the thing itself, but from your judgment about it. And that judgment you can erase right now. Think of that. It is not the storm that breaks you, but the way you decide to see the storm. It is not the angry client, the cruel comment, or the rain on your way home. It is the story you tell yourself about it that either leaves you shattered or leaves you standing. I remember a scene. A man at work is confronted by a furious client. The man cannot control if that client woke up angry, argued with their spouse, or just had a bad day. That is out of reach. What is in reach? His response. He can mirror the rage, absorb it, and ruin his own day. Or he can stay calm, set a respectful boundary, and move on. One choice turns the day into chaos. The other keeps it steady. That is power. And you've lived this in smaller ways. An argument plays on repeat in your mind. The words you should have said. The way you should have stood taller. Hours pass, but nothing shifts. That is the line. Wasting energy on what you can't control versus saving it for what you can. The first leaves you hollow. The second leaves you free. So here's a practice for you. Write down your worries for this week. Everyone, then draw 2 columns. What you can change, what you cannot. You will be surprised how much falls into the second column. These are stones you have been carrying as if they were yours, but they never were. Looking at that list is like standing in front of those 2 buckets. Ask yourself, where will you pour your strength today? You cannot control whether you land the job, but you can prepare sharper answers. You cannot control if it rains, but you can carry an umbrella. Small actions. Simple, yet the effect is profound. Because the instant you shift from complaining to acting, you cut off the roots of helplessness. You reclaim what is truly yours. From there, build habits. When your mind drifts toward the uncontrollable, pause, breathe, say it softly. This is not up to me. That phrase is a switch. It snaps you back. It severs the spiral before it consumes you. And then comes the most important step, move. As psychologist Julia Pascal puts it, we need less rum and more run. When your head is stuck in overthinking, get up, walk, change rooms, clean a drawer, move your body. Because when the body shifts, the mind loosens. Motion dissolves rumination. Epictetus gave us the clearest warning. Some things are up to us, and some are not. If you think what isn't up to you is, you will be unhappy. That is the trap, the mixing of the 2 buckets. The impossible fight against things you never controlled drains you more than any real labor ever could, and the refusal to let go chains you to unhappiness. But here is the gift. Clarity comes back the moment you put down what isn't yours. Energy returns. Peace follows. And you discover that the world does not crush you. You crush yourself only when you pour your life into the wrong bucket. So here's my quiet challenge. Write in the comments just one word: focus. Let it be your shield this week. Subscribe if you want to walk further on this stoic path, where clarity and strength replace noise and helplessness. And remember this, every time you say this is not up to me, you take a step back toward freedom. Every time you move instead of ruminate, you reclaim your life. Don't waste another ounce of your fire on shadows. Save it for what is yours, because the moment you do, you will feel lighter, sharper, steadier, and that is the only power worth carrying forward. From here, let us carry this clarity into the next meditation, because once you learn to protect your energy, you will discover how to love without turning it into a transaction, and how to give without chains of expectation. Entering the 7th chapter, Picture this familiar ache. You give with both hands, affection, attention, thoughtful gestures, pouring yourself into someone else, and then you wait. You wait for that gesture to come back, for that mirror of care to shine toward you. But the silence that follows cuts deeper than you expected. Disappointment creeps in, whispering that maybe they don't love you as much, maybe your effort didn't matter. That, my friend, is how expectation poisons the heart. It sneaks in quietly and turns what was once pure into something heavy, something fragile. Think back to the last time this happened. Maybe you bought a beautiful gift, planned a surprise, or simply offered tenderness. And when nothing similar returned, you felt cheated. But here's the hard truth. Love is not a ledger. It is not accounting. Yet we often turn it into one without even noticing. I gave this much, they gave less. That is no longer love. That is a disguised transaction. History holds lessons in its quiet corners. Consider the story of Frida Kahlo and Diego Rivera. Their love was fierce, undeniable, but expressed in very different tongues. She poured herself raw into every word and gesture. He loved more freely, more detached. Their bond was real, but so was the fracture. What does it teach us? That not everyone loves in the same way, with the same rhythm, or in the same language. Expecting another heart to beat exactly as yours is like demanding two different songs to play the same melody. It is impossible, and it isn't just about romance. You've lived this with friends too. You're always the one who calls first, the one who checks in, the one who makes plans, until one day you pause and think, why am I the only one carrying this friendship? Affection turns bitter. Generosity becomes resentment. The scale tilts, and suddenly you are keeping score in a game no one agreed to play. Here, Epictetus speaks with that piercing clarity the Stoics are known for. Do not seek to have events happen as you want them to. Rather, want them to happen as they do, and your life will go well. What if we applied that to love? Instead of demanding that someone else feel or act in the way we do, we focus on what is truly ours, how we choose to love. That does not mean resignation. It means liberation, to give without chains, to act from your values rather than your fears. So how do you live this way? Start by dropping the mental balance scale. Love is not accounting, it is a choice. When you give freely without strings, you experience a lightness you cannot find in any bargain. But clarity also demands courage. If you find yourself always carrying the weight alone, ask the hard question, is this space healthy for me? Because loving without expectation does not mean accepting endless depletion. Even a fountain must be replenished, or it runs dry. Imagine Marcus Aurelius in the age of dating apps. He matches with someone, meets them once, and then they vanish, ghosted. Would he write long messages, stalk their status, invent stories to explain the silence? Of course not. He would shrug, delete, and remind himself, what is outside my control should not disturb my peace. That is the Stoic posture, firm, not bitter. Free, not desperate. Ask yourself honestly, why did I give? Was it because my heart overflowed, because it was true to my values? Or was it because I secretly hoped for something back? If it was the first, then let it go and be proud you lived aligned with yourself. If it was the second, you see clearly now, that wasn't love, that was negotiation, time to shift. And when your mind starts to spiral, why didn't they return it? Why didn't they match me? Remember the advice of psychologist Julia Pascal, less rum, more run. When thoughts spin, don't sit there and feed them. Move, walk, call another friend. Write your feelings down. Action dissolves the loop. Motion brings you back to the present, where life is actually happening. Here's the truth stripped bare. Real love is free, not chained, not traded, not calculated. When you view love through the eyes of Epictetus, you see its true value. It lies not in what you receive, but in how you choose to give. Once you live from that clarity, something remarkable happens. Your strength multiplies. Your fullness no longer depends on someone else's gestures. It flows from your own decision to love with freedom. So let me ask you, what is the most authentic gesture you've given without expecting anything in return? Hold on to that memory. Share it if you like, because that moment when you gave purely, freely, is proof of what love can be when unchained by expectation. And from here, let us step forward. For once you learn to love without the poison of return, you are ready to discover another freedom, the joy of celebrating every small step, not just the finish line. Moving into the 8th chapter, let me ask you straight. Are you the kind of person who only allows yourself to clap at the very end? The diploma in hand, the promotion secured, the wedding day sealed with applause. If that's the only time you whisper, "I did it," then you are missing the very marrow of life. Because the truth is sharp. If you wait for the finish line, you turn the journey into one long, exhausting silence. Think of it this way. It's like deciding you'll only celebrate on graduation day, ignoring every night you stayed awake with tired eyes, pushing through the urge to quit, or training for months to run a marathon and letting yourself feel proud only for the single second when you cross the line. You miss the real prize, the daily transformation that built you brick by brick. Life isn't made of milestones carved in marble. It's made of steps so small the world doesn't notice. But if you don't learn to see them, you'll always feel like you're behind, forever not enough. Seneca warned us, while we waste our time hesitating, life speeds by, and he was right. We waste entire seasons waiting for the perfect peak while the quiet triumphs slip through our fingers. Look to the example of Matthew McConaughey standing on the Oscar stage. He could have soaked in the applause, the gold statue, the single night of glory. But instead, he said his hero was always his future self, 10 years ahead. His victory wasn't the award. It was the daily act of becoming. That is the Stoic way. Success is not a trophy. Success is a process. Now picture your own life. You pick up a guitar. At first, it's nothing but noise. Fingers clumsy, strings out of tune. You dream of the day you'll play your favorite song flawlessly. But if you only allow pride on that day, the entire road there will taste of misery. If instead you celebrate that yesterday you nailed a tricky chord, or today your fingers didn't tire as fast, you build momentum. Quiet pride pushes you further than applause ever could. It's the same with training your body, with learning a language, with building a career. How often have you told yourself, "I'm not there yet, I'm still not good enough," without seeing that you've already walked miles beyond the place where you began? Every step counts. When you ignore them, you go blind to your own growth. This is where Epictetus slices through illusion. He taught that what matters is not the dream far ahead, but the response you give today. It's not about waiting for a perfect outcome. It's about acting with integrity now, and every time you do that, even unseen, you have already won. That clarity brings a strength no complaint ever could. So, let's make it simple. At the end of your day, write down one thing, just one, that you made progress on. Maybe you rose without hitting snooze. Maybe you went to the gym when you didn't feel like it. Maybe today you argued less than yesterday. Doesn't matter how small. Write it down, and if you like, give yourself a tiny reward. Play your favorite song, sip a slow coffee, or whisper, "I took a step today." It may sound silly, but it changes the way you see yourself. Here's another challenge: redefine success. Forget the grand finish lines for a moment. Ask instead, how many times have I chosen not to give up? That's the real measure. Every time you resist laziness, every time you take one more step, even a tiny one, that is victory. That is strength. Because if you wait for the podium, life will slip past you. But if you learn to honor every step, you discover the truth. The journey itself is the reward. You don't need the crowd to clap. You don't need the world to see. You know, and that's enough. And when you begin to live this way, something shifts. Epictetus's meditations stop being old words on a page and become a shield reminding you that each honest step is already worthy, already powerful. Celebrate every step, because life is not just made of goals, it is made of roads, and it is on those roads, not the podiums, where you are quietly, steadily transformed. From here, carry this perspective with you, because once you learn to celebrate the small victories, you'll be ready to face the next truth, that not everyone around you can give you honesty, and that truth, though heavy, is always the stronger ground to stand on. Entering the 9th chapter, let me ask you this. Have you ever been told exactly what you wanted to hear, only to discover later that the truth was far from it? At first, it feels like support, like a warm blanket on a cold night. But when the real story appears, that comfort is exposed as illusion. What once soothed you now feels like betrayal. Lies may calm you for a moment, but they leave you standing on thin ice. Truth, though it stings, gives you ground that will not crack beneath your feet. Think of the culture we live in. Scroll through social media, and what do you see? Smiles, success, curated lives that look like flawless movies. You admire it. Maybe you even envy it. But behind the filters, the chaos is still there. Hidden, unspoken. That's the trap of our times. We are seduced by beauty when what we truly need is reality. And that's where the meditations of Epictetus rescue us. He reminds us that to live in falsehood is to walk into danger blindfolded. To live in truth is to build on stone, not sand. Seneca said it plainly. Truth never perishes, but it can be expensive. He did not mean money, he meant cost. The cost of discomfort. The cost of losing friends who only wanted flattery. The cost of being called harsh because you refuse to soften the blade of honesty. Yet, what is the alternative? To live in a stage play, surrounded by cardboard walls that collapse the moment life leans against them. Lies protect nothing, they only delay the inevitable. Let's bring this closer. Imagine your friend shows you their project. You see the cracks, you see what could be better. But instead of speaking, you nod and say, "It's great." It feels like support, but it isn't. You've stolen their chance to grow. Now imagine the other choice. You speak calmly, honestly. You tell them where it can improve. At first, their face hardens. Silence follows. But later, maybe days, maybe weeks, that seed of honesty begins to bear fruit. And that moment will serve them far more than 1,000 empty praises. The same applies to you. Every time you choose an uncomfortable truth, even a small one, you are training your character. You don't need speeches on a stage. You need the simple acts. Owning a mistake instead of covering it. Saying, "I don't feel like it," instead of inventing excuses. Admitting that procrastination came from fear, not lack of time. Each of these is a brick. Brick by brick, Honesty builds a life that doesn't collapse under its own weight. And Epictetus offers us a mirror sharper than most can handle. If they speak badly of you and it is true, correct yourself. If it is a lie, laugh it off. Think of the freedom in that. If criticism reveals something real, you have been given a gift, a chance to grow. If it is false, why suffer over something that doesn't even exist? Truth doesn't chain you, it sets you free. Now consider the power of surrounding yourself with people who also value truth. It is not always pleasant. Honesty sometimes hurts more than silence. But these are the conversations that forge bonds strong enough to survive storms. You don't need a crowd of cheerleaders who clap at every step. You need a few who hold you steady with honesty, even when it stings. That is the difference between relationships that endure and ones that collapse the moment conflict appears. The final lesson is this: truth is not for everyone. Many run from it because it demands courage, but for those who choose it, masks fall away. The face that remains is real, and realness is power. In a world drunk on filters and facades, authenticity is rebellion, and rebellion, in the Stoic sense, is strength. So understand this: choosing truth may cost you comfort, but it will give you clarity. It may strip away illusions, but it will grant you ground solid enough to build a life upon. And in that clarity, in that strength, you will discover what no therapy of complaints can ever give you: the unshakable power of being real. From here, carry this armor with you, because once you learn to live without masks, you will be ready for the next meditation. A reminder that the work you choose to love and the excellence you pour into it can transform not just your days, but the very meaning of your life. Advancing to the 10th chapter, pause for a moment and picture this. You wake up to the alarm, drag yourself out of bed, swallow breakfast without taste, and march toward a job that feels like slow death. Each day is just a countdown, each hour a wait, all for the fragile promise of Friday, when you can finally breathe. And then the cycle begins again. Tell me, is this living, or is this surviving with your soul on mute? The tragedy is not that people end up in work they dislike. The tragedy is that so many accept it as if no other path exists. A life where dreams are shelved, passions starved, and joy postponed until retirement. By then, the spark is gone. The fire has long turned to ash. That is not life. That is surrender. Now, think of Casey Neistat. He was stuck in jobs that gave him stability but no pulse. One day, he refused to keep dying quietly. He picked up a camera and began telling stories without guarantees, without applause, without knowing if anyone would care. What happened? The world cared, but not because of luck. It was because he married passion with discipline. He didn't chase fast money, he chased craft. And that combination, love and discipline, built a career, a brand, and a life. Here is where Marcus Aurelius sharpens the blade. Do every act of your life as if it were your last. Imagine carrying that mantra into your morning. If today were the final page, would you want to spend it doing work you despise, waiting for the clock to set you free? Of course not, because time is the one resource you never recover. Each act, each choice, each hour is your life being spent. Waste it, and it is gone forever. But Epictetus gives us the shield. He reminded us that circumstances matter less than the virtue you bring to them. It is not the job title that defines your worth. It is the spirit with which you act. Say this to yourself: what I do with virtue. Make it your compass. Whether you are serving a table, writing a song, or launching a business, do it with honesty, justice, and excellence. That is freedom. The danger lies in waiting for permission. We tell ourselves, I'll start when I have more time, when I have more money, when everything is perfect. And while we wait, the years flee. Perfection never comes, life doesn't pause, and dreams rot on the shelf. So start small, 15 minutes a day, 15 minutes of real devotion to what you love. No distractions, no excuses, just you and your craft. It may feel insignificant, but remember, seeds look small too, yet with care they crack stone and break through concrete. Discipline turns passion into mastery. Repetition turns talent into legacy. Surround yourself with those who respect your path, because there will always be voices saying you are wasting your time, that your dream is unrealistic, that the safe path is better. But what good is safety if it robs you of living? Ask yourself that. The Stoics would answer with clarity, safety without meaning is not safety, it is imprisonment. So build quietly, write one page, record one song, paint one canvas. Day by day you lay bricks, and one day you will look back and see not scattered efforts, but a wall strong enough to stand against storms. That is how love and excellence together transform a mere hobby into a real path. Remember this truth. When you work at something that aligns with your essence, clarity appears, strength grows. And no therapy of complaints can give you what simple, honest effort gives you in abundance. Because when you do what you love, and you do it well, you stop being a passenger. You begin to steer. So carry the mantra with you. Whisper it when doubt visits. What I do with virtue. Big or small, bold or timid. If done with virtue, it is right. Celebrate it, because in every honest action you are already winning. And here lies the lesson, sharp and unshakable. When you do what you love and do it well, you don't just live more fully, you build a solid life. A life that doesn't run on excuses, but on strength. The kind Epictetus placed in your hands, one choice, one action, one day at a time. From here, let's carry this flame forward. Because once you learn to align love with discipline, you will be ready to face the next truth, that nothing and no one lasts forever, and that freedom lies in learning to let go. Entering the 11th chapter, let us face a truth that few want to look in the eye. Nothing and no one lasts forever. Everything you know, everything you cling to, carries an invisible expiration date. The vacation you longed for ends too quickly. The song that once electrified your heart fades into background noise. Even the faces you thought were permanent, even the places you swore would never change, they shift, they vanish, they evolve. And so do we. We like to pretend otherwise, but permanence is an illusion we buy to soothe our fear. Adrian, a celebrated chef, learned this the hard way. For years he seemed untouchable. His palate was so refined he could sense the faintest nuance in a sauce. Critics adored him. Crowds lined up at his doors. He believed the gift was eternal. And in that belief, he burned himself out, chasing applause, rushing from one service to the next, desperate to hold the crown of recognition. He forgot what so many forget, that even the brightest gifts can dim. Then came the morning that broke his illusion, a car accident, ordinary, random, cruel in its timing. He lived, yes, but his sense of taste, the very core of his identity, was shattered. Overnight, what defined him disappeared. Imagine it. The applause silenced, the talent gone, the identity he had built collapsing into dust. He sank into despair, convinced his story was over. Because when you build yourself on one thing, losing it feels like losing your soul. And yet, nothing lasts forever, not even pain. In that dark season, Adrian began to notice what remained. He still had technique, creativity, and decades of discipline carved into his bones. He could teach. He could mentor. What began as mourning slowly became reinvention. He trained young chefs, passed on the flame, taught them that mastery is not only about tasting flavors, but about cultivating passion. What looked like an end became a beginning. That is the secret hiding in impermanence. Epictetus did not speak of this from theory. His own life was proof. Born a slave, crippled by cruelty when his master twisted his legs, exiled by an emperor, he endured losses that would have destroyed another. And yet he never said, "I lost my freedom. I lost my health." Instead, he said, "I have returned it." He saw life's gifts as loans, things entrusted for a while, then taken back. Harsh? Perhaps, but that clarity is medicine. For when you see everything as borrowed, gratitude grows, and fear loosens its grip. So how do we train ourselves to live this way? Begin small. Savor your morning coffee as if it were the last cup you'll ever hold, because in a sense, it is. That conversation with a friend? Treasure it, even if it never happens again. When something ends, don't mourn with "what a shame it's over." Say instead, "How lucky I was to have lived it." It seems like wordplay, but it reshapes the heart. Another practice: diversify your joy. If your entire happiness rests on one person, one job, one fragile thing, life will one day remind you nothing is forever. Spread your roots. Plant them in many places so that when one season ends, your tree still stands. Even small acts can train this detachment. Give away an object you love but don't need. Take a different route home. Let go of a piece of clothing that's had its time. These little rehearsals remind you everything changes and it's okay. Even popular culture whispers the same truth. Think of Netflix. Just when you are hooked on a series, the season ends. It is their way of reminding you not to cling too tightly. If even stories on a screen have an ending, how much more so the stories of our lives? Here is the heart of it. When the big loss comes, the death, the separation, the irreversible break, you will not be shattered beyond repair if you have practiced letting go. You will hurt, yes, but you will not be destroyed. You will know, as Epictetus knew, that life never truly takes what it did not first lend. This meditation, perhaps more than any other, becomes armor for the soul. It strips away the illusion of permanence and replaces it with clarity. And clarity is strength. You stop obsessing over keeping what cannot be kept. You begin to live fully, gratefully, while it is here. So let this truth settle in. Nothing is truly yours, but everything can be lived deeply while it lasts. That is enough. That is freedom. And if you've carried this far with me, stay a little longer, because what comes next is the final key, the sharpest lesson of all, the weight of regret and how it crushes heavier than failure ever could. Advancing to the 12th chapter, imagine this scene with brutal clarity. It is the final evening of your life. You lie back, close your eyes, and instead of peace, a chorus of unfinished sentences fills your mind. I could have started that project. I could have spoken the truth I swallowed. I could have dared to live as I truly wanted. The weight presses down like iron chains. It is not failure that crushes you. It is the haunting of what you never tried. Failure leaves scars, yes, but scars tell stories. They are proof that you stepped into the arena, that you lived with courage. Regret leaves nothing but blank pages, silent reminders that you never even held the pen. That is heavier than any wound. Epictetus struck right at the heart of this when he said, "It is not death we should fear, but never having begun to live. Death will come for all, but living, that we skip, that we delay, that we betray." And the tragedy is that we make that choice not once, but every single day. A nurse named Bronnie Ware spent years listening to people on their deathbeds. She wrote down the patterns she heard again and again, and the most common regret was not "I failed too much." It was this: "I wish I had had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me." Think about that. Not the losses, not the mistakes, but the unlived life. That regret is a chain tighter and heavier than any failure you could endure. And you don't have to wait until your final days to feel it. You feel it in the everyday moments. That business idea that sparked excitement but stayed in the drawer because the timing wasn't perfect. That trip you always said you'd take but postponed until one day the chance evaporated. That conversation you wanted to have, where you could have spoken your heart, but you stayed silent to avoid discomfort. In the moment, these seem small, but they stack. And one day you wake to find an entire life built of postponed leaps. This isn't a call to recklessness. It isn't about throwing caution to the wind. It is about choosing one action, small, concrete, real, today. Talk to that person, write that first page, share that idea. Even if it trembles, even if no one notices, act. Because every day you delay, regret grows with interest, and the bill it collects is far more painful than any temporary failure. Shift your relationship with risk. Failure can bruise you. You might look foolish, lose some money, hear someone sneer, "I told you so," but failure is temporary. You feel it, you process it, you learn, and you move forward carrying a scar that proves you tried. Regret does not fade. It whispers endlessly. It shadows every new choice with the ghost of the ones you never made. That is the weight that breaks a person. So ask yourself each morning, do I prefer the brief discomfort of trying or the lifelong weight of wondering what could have been? That single question exposes your excuses. It forces you to look directly at the price of hesitation. Add a touch of humor if you must. What would Epictetus do? Would he sit around waiting for perfect conditions, scrolling endlessly, hoping the universe hands him certainty? Doubt it. He would act with what he had. He would move with virtue, then rest in peace, knowing he gave his all, even if the outcome fell short. The lesson cuts deep but clear. Failure leaves scars, regret leaves chains. And if the Stoics taught us anything, it is that life is honored not through daydreams, but through action. Don't let your story be filled with "I could have." Let it be written with "I tried, and I tried with peace in my heart." Because that is the real victory, not perfection, but clarity. Not applause, but the quiet strength of knowing nothing was left unlived. So live this way. Each step you take matters. Each stumble teaches. Each day becomes a quiet triumph over chaos. And when you return to the end, whenever it comes, you will not lie there haunted by what you never touched. You will close your eyes knowing you gave, you tried, you lived. From here, let us bring this journey to its return. Every meditation we've carried together, from detachment to clarity, from love to courage, was never meant to stay on the page. They were a foundation, a way to open your eyes and steady your steps in the middle of storms. But seeing the path is not the same as walking it. Philosophy that never leaves the mind becomes nothing more than decoration. Now comes the harder, deeper work, taking those truths and unfolding them into daily choices, habits, and perspectives. It is here that survival turns into strength and clarity turns into action. If the first stretch of our journey was about waking up to reality, this next stretch is about learning how to live it step by step, day by day. Imagine this moment. The storm has passed, the battlefield is quiet, and you are left standing, breathing, scarred but alive. The truths you've carried until now taught you how to endure, how to hold your ground, how to see clearly what belongs to you and what does not. But survival is not the end. Survival is the doorway. Beyond it lies the art of rebuilding, of taking those hard-earned lessons and turning them into a life worth living. Now, pause and ask yourself, what happens after the fight? When the silence comes, when the excuses have fallen, when you finally see your hands empty of everything you clung to, what do? Most people rush to fill the space. They drown in noise, distractions, and endless obligations, terrified of emptiness. But the Stoic sees that space differently. The Stoic knows that the absence of weight is not void, it is freedom. The real challenge is not surviving chaos. The real challenge is learning to stand in peace without craving chains. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. This strength is not loud. It doesn't need banners or applause. It's the quiet fire of a person who has stopped outsourcing their soul." In Part A, you learned not to hand your happiness to another. In Part B, the task is deeper. To build a foundation so strong that even solitude feels like a companion. Let me tell you about a man I once knew. He was brilliant at his craft, but terrified of silence. Every evening he drowned himself in television, company, anything to avoid being left with his own thoughts. One day, a health scare forced him into bed rest, alone, no work, no noise. At first, he panicked, but as the days stretched, something shifted. He began journaling, confronting truths he had buried under noise. By the time he recovered, he was transformed. He no longer feared silence. He used it as a forge. His friendships grew healthier. His work became sharper. He found a calm that had eluded him his entire life. This is the essence of the first expansion. Solitude is not emptiness. Solitude is the ground where you plant yourself. Epictetus did not mean for us to hide from others, but to stop making them our crutches. If you can learn to be alone without collapsing, then when people enter your life, they do not complete you, they complement you. That is freedom. That is power. So how do we practice this? Begin by treating solitude like training, not punishment. Give yourself time every day to stand still without distractions. No phone, no noise, just you, breathing. At first, it will itch. Your mind will scream for escape. Stay anyway. This is the weight room of the soul. Each minute you endure, you grow stronger. Each session, you learn that silence does not kill you. It strengthens you. Next, reflect with honesty. Write down your thoughts, unfiltered, unpolished. Don't write for an audience. Write for truth. Seneca practiced this nightly, reviewing his day not to scold himself, but to see clearly. Ask yourself, where did I act with virtue today? Where did I fall? Where can I rise tomorrow? Small, honest answers build clarity more durable than any applause. Another practice, redefine your sense of company. Learn to treat your own presence as worthy. Cook yourself a meal with care. Walk without headphones. Read slowly. When you treat yourself as someone valuable to spend time with, loneliness transforms into richness. You begin to realize you are not waiting for others to make life meaningful, you are already living it. But let's not sugarcoat it. This path is not comfortable. There will be nights when the silence feels like a knife, when doubts echo louder than comfort, when you want to run back to distractions. That is the test. That is the forge. Remember what Epictetus taught. Difficulties show what men are. Endurance is not proven in crowds. It is proven when no one is watching and you still choose to stand. From here, consider the broader consequence. Once you master solitude, your relationships shift. You stop clinging. You stop demanding constant reassurance. You enter friendships and love not as a beggar, but as a giver. You bring fullness rather than hunger. And that is the paradox. When you no longer need people desperately, you finally learn how to love them freely. Think again of Adrian, the chef who lost his taste. At first, the silence of that loss crushed him, but in solitude, he discovered what remained: his discipline, his ability to teach, his passion for passing on wisdom. What looked like the end became reinvention. Why? Because he did not let the absence destroy him. He let it remake him. This is the truth of Part B's opening lesson. Solitude is strength disguised as emptiness. When you embrace it, you stop being a slave to distraction. You stop running from yourself, and you begin to walk with a steady calm that no one can take from you. So here is the challenge, my friend. Tonight, when the day is done, switch off the noise, sit with yourself. Even 5 minutes. Let the silence hold you. It will feel heavy at first, but that weight is not punishment. It is the training ground of freedom. And as you rise from it, carry this thought. Every great act of rebuilding begins in silence. The oak grows from a seed in the dark soil. The warrior regains strength not in the battle, but in the quiet before dawn. And you, if you learn to honor solitude, will find that emptiness is not your enemy. It is your shield. From here, we move forward. For once you master being alone, the next step reveals itself. Learning to see time not as an enemy rushing past, but as an ally that can be shaped, molded, and honored in the present. That is where the next lesson awaits. Moving into the second step of this deeper journey, let me draw you a picture. A clock ticking in a quiet room. You hear each second pass, steady and indifferent, as if it doesn't care whether you're paying attention or not. That is time, silent, relentless, and most of us treat it like an enemy, either clinging to what's already gone or fearing what hasn't arrived. But here's the truth. Time itself is never the burden. It is what you do with it that weighs on you. Think of the countless nights you've replayed a mistake from years ago. You lie awake, punishing yourself over words that can't be unsaid, actions that cannot be rewound. Or imagine how often you've fast-forwarded into the future, rehearsing disasters that may never happen, feeling the fear of storms that haven't even formed. It's like walking through life with a movie projector strapped to your back, one reel always showing old regrets, the other playing trailers for futures that don't exist yet. And while you watch, the present slips through your fingers. Marcus Aurelius said it with a blunt clarity that still stings. You will never live yesterday again. The future has not yet arrived. Live the present with justice and self-control. That's it. Yesterday is sealed. Tomorrow is unborn. What you have is now. And yet we trade the only moment we own for shadows, phantoms of memory and prediction. Epictetus sharpened this further. It's not things that upset us, but our opinions about them. The problem is rarely the mistake itself. It's the way you keep bleeding yourself on its edge long after the wound should have closed. The problem is not tomorrow's uncertainty. It's the fear you choose to paint onto it before it even shows up. Time does not crush us. We crush ourselves by carrying it wrong. Let me ground this with a story. A colleague once spoke too quickly in a meeting. He confidently gave a delivery date that was completely wrong. Silence filled the room. Correction came swiftly. Embarrassment burned on his face. That night, he didn't sleep. He replayed the moment 100 times, imagining everyone judging him as incompetent. But here's the twist. By the next morning, almost no one remembered. Life had moved on. Only he was still standing in the ashes of yesterday's fire, holding smoke as if it were substance. We all do this. We grip the flame of the past and wonder why we burn. The Stoic command is simple. Let go. Take your hand off the fire. Come back to this moment, because only here can you act. Only here can you breathe. So how do we train this in practice? One method is movement. When you feel the loop tightening, stand up, change rooms, break the spell of repetition. Another is full presence. Cook a meal with your whole attention. Listen to someone without the urge to check your phone. Anchor yourself in what is happening now. It's like building muscle. The more you train, the stronger your presence becomes. And when fear of the future gnaws at you, reduce it to one step. Write down a single action you can take today, not tomorrow's solution, just today's step. The future is not solved in the head. It is built brick by brick in the present. Seneca reminded us, while we waste our time hesitating, life speeds by. He wasn't scolding, he was warning. Life is not waiting for you to feel ready. It is happening right here, right now. And the discipline of returning to this moment is not a soft practice. It is war against distraction, against regret, against anxiety. Picture this. You're in the middle of an argument, and later your mind replays every angle, every line you could have said. Hours pass, nothing changes. That is the difference between pouring energy into what you can't control and saving it for what you can. The moment you shift from rumination to presence, you stop feeding shadows and start living substance. Here's a challenge to try. Write down your worries for the week. Then split them into 2 lists, what you can act on, what you cannot. The second list will be longer than you think. Cross it out. It was never yours to carry. Focus only on the first. That's where your life actually lives. Remember this. Failure wounds you once. Regret wounds you forever. And the habit of leaving the past where it belongs, of refusing to paint fear onto the unborn future, is what frees you from both. The present moment, however ordinary, is the only ground strong enough to hold you. So let today be your training ground. When the past knocks, don't answer. When the future taunts, smile and return to your step. Because in the end, freedom is not somewhere out there. It is here, in the discipline of now. And from this still point, we can take the next turn. For once you learn to live in the present, the question becomes, how do you protect that clarity from being drowned in the noise of other people's chaos? That is where the next lesson will lead. From here, let's step into the third movement of this journey, where the noise of others begins to test the calm you've been building. Picture this. You're walking down the street, shoulders light, mind at ease, and suddenly someone shoves a heavy sack into your arms. You didn't ask for it. You didn't need it. Yet there you are, staggering under a weight that was never yours. That sack is every complaint, every drama, every bitterness others try to hand you, and most of us carry it without question. Now imagine the absurdity. You haul that sack to work, let it slump onto your desk, drag it to dinner, even rest it beside your bed. And when you can't sleep, you blame your own weakness, forgetting that the burden wasn't yours to begin with. This is how so many live emotional mules for other people's chaos. But here, the Stoic draws a line in the sand. Epictetus reminded us, some things are up to us, others are not. And someone else's drama, not up to you. Yet how often do we forget? A co-worker vents about their boss, and suddenly you resent a man who has never wronged you. A friend complains about their partner, and you carry the tension home as if it was stitched into your own skin. Slowly, without noticing, you adopt storms that aren't yours. And here is the danger. When you let borrowed clouds darken your sky, you lose the light that could have guided your own steps. I remember a man I knew who lived like this. He thought compassion meant absorbing everything. If his sister was angry, he was angry. If his friend was anxious, he was restless. Over time, he became hollowed out, filled with borrowed emotions that left no space for his own. His health broke, his clarity faded, and still he thought he was being kind. Only later, when he learned the difference between support and absorption, did he begin to heal. He discovered that true compassion listens but does not drown, stands near but does not collapse. The Stoics would have smiled knowingly at his struggle. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. But when you carry others' storms, you abandon that power. You hand it away for free." Seneca too was merciless in pointing out that much of our misery is second-hand. We sit in theaters of other people's tragedies and forget to live our own lives. So how do we draw the line? Boundaries. Not walls of coldness, but shields of clarity. It means learning to say, "I hear you, but I won't wear this weight." It means allowing someone to express their pain without tattooing it on your own skin. It means remembering that empathy without limits is not love, it's self-erasure. Picture this practice. When someone unloads their drama on you, imagine physically handing it back. Not with cruelty, but with steadiness. You say to yourself, "This is not mine." Then you choose what to do with your own energy. Focus it on the work, the craft, the relationships that actually belong to you. Each time you refuse to carry the sack, you grow lighter, sharper, freer. And here's the paradox. When you stop drowning in other people's waters, you can finally throw them a rope. Support comes not from sinking with them, but from standing firm on your own ground. A calm presence can rescue more than a shared panic ever could. This lesson matters because your energy is finite. Spend it all on second-hand battles, and you'll have nothing left for the war that is actually yours. Protect it. Guard it as a sacred fire, because once extinguished, no one else will relight it for you. So tonight, reflect. How many weights on your back aren't even yours? Which storms have you mistaken for your own, and dare to drop them? Let them fall where they belong. You'll feel the ground beneath your feet again, steady and clear. And once you've learned to set down borrowed burdens, the next step becomes obvious, directing that reclaimed energy into the steady discipline of building. For clarity without construction is wasted light, and strength unused is strength lost. That is where the journey carries us next. Advancing to the fourth chapter of this journey, picture a craftsman in a dimly lit workshop. His hands are rough, his eyes tired, but before him stands a wall, brick by brick, steady, silent, no applause, no audience, just the rhythm of work. That is where success is born, not in the spotlight, but in the unseen repetition of effort. Too many wait for motivation to knock on their door like a faithful friend. But motivation is a liar. It promises, "I'm on my way," while still looking for its shoes. If you depend on it, you'll starve. What you can rely on, what never betrays, is discipline, the simple act of showing up, even when every cell in your body resists. Epictetus was blunt. You don't become a champion without sweating. He knew that results are never in your control, but effort always is. You cannot guarantee victory, but you can guarantee work. And that is enough, because fortune bends toward those who persist. Let me tell you a story. Before Stephen King became a household name, he scrubbed laundry rooms by day and hunched over a tiny kitchen desk by night. His first manuscript ended up in the trash, crumpled and dismissed. It was his wife who dug it out, pressed it back into his hands, and urged him to send it in. That book, Carrie, became the spark that lit an empire. But the miracle wasn't luck. It was the habit of writing every night when there was no applause, no paycheck, no guarantee. Think about your own life. How many gyms are full in January, only to echo empty by February? Because desire fades, emotion fades. The fire of the moment cannot carry you across the years. Only steady footsteps can. The man who continues when he feels nothing, that is the one who transforms. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, do every act of your life as though it were your last. Notice he didn't say, wait until you feel inspired. He said, act. Each small deed, if done with care, becomes a shield against mediocrity. The truth is simple but heavy. Success doesn't fall from the sky wrapped in ribbon. It is built brick by brick in silence. Here's the trap most fall into: distraction. You sit down to work, phone buzzing by your hand, and whisper, just one glance. 15 minutes later, you're watching cats dance salsa. 20 minutes more scrolling through comments you don't even care about. The wall you were building remains half finished. You trade progress for noise, and you wonder why life feels scattered. The fix is brutal but effective. Remove the bait. Put the phone in another room. Guard your focus as a warrior guards his shield. If you cannot master the small choice of where you place your attention, how can you master the larger course of your life? Start small. 5 minutes of reading, 5 minutes of training, 5 minutes of writing. Do not sneer at the small. 5 minutes repeated daily becomes a fortress. Habits are built through repetition, not heroic bursts. As Seneca warned us, it is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it. Every wasted hour is a brick you never placed. Every consistent hour is a wall rising slowly behind you. And progress is not measured in leaps. It is measured in increments. Yesterday you ran 2 miles. Today you ran 3. Yesterday you wrote 1 page. Today you wrote 2. Yesterday you shouted. Today you stayed silent. These are victories, quiet, invisible, but real. Collect them, and they will carry you farther than any sudden surge of emotion. Modern psychology agrees. Small wins create momentum. Each completed task, however minor, lowers the resistance for the next. Action fuels action, and little by little, you become what you repeat. You stop saying I want to be and start living I am. So ask yourself now, what wall are you building? What brick will you lay today? It doesn't need to be grand, it only needs to be placed. The man who lays 1 brick daily will someday stand before a fortress. The man who waits for inspiration will die with empty hands. This is your shield against excuses. To work first, to let results follow. Epictetus lived it, not just taught it. Do what depends on you. Leave the rest. And when laziness whispers, when doubt claws, remember, motivation is a guest. Discipline is family. One stays, the other drifts. If these words strike truth in you, mark this moment in the comments with a single word: brick. Let it be a reminder of what you are building, quietly, steadily, without the need for applause. And if you want to walk further with this discipline, subscribe so you won't miss the next step. Because ahead lies the next trial. Not just choosing your work, but choosing your direction. For what good is strength if it is harnessed to someone else's plan? That is the road we take next. Entering the 5th chapter of this journey, imagine a man standing at a crossroads with maps scattered at his feet. To the left lies the road his parents wanted. To the right, the one his friends expected. Behind him, the safe road that society applauds. And yet, straight ahead, uncertain, unmarked, risky, stands the path that belongs to him. He hesitates, paralyzed not by lack of options, but by fear of choosing. And in that hesitation, time slips away. This is the tragedy of the donkey between two piles of hay, starving in the midst of abundance because he could not decide. Absurd, yes. But how many of us live exactly like that? We wait for certainty. We wait for someone else to pick for us. We wait until the road becomes so overgrown we can no longer see where it once split. And in that waiting, we hand our lives to others piece by piece. Epictetus knew this paralysis well. Born a slave, his choices stolen, his body even crippled by another's cruelty. And yet, when finally freed, he made one unshakable decision: to live guided by virtue, not circumstance. Later, when Rome expelled philosophers, he might have surrendered to despair. Instead, he moved to Greece, founded his school, and taught generations. No man is free who is not master of himself. His life proved the truth. You cannot always control the ground beneath you, but you can always choose the direction of your next step. Now imagine your own map. You say, "I want to be healthier." Vague, hollow. That is not a direction, it is a wish. But if you say, "I will train 3 times this week and cook my meals," suddenly the path takes shape. You say, "I want to be happier." Empty. But if you say, "I will put down my phone an hour before bed and write 3 honest lines in a journal," you have chosen a road. And every choice you put on paper becomes a compass when life's noise tries to sweep you away. Marcus Aurelius wrote daily reminders to himself, because even an emperor risked being dragged by the urgency of others. His question was simple: am I steering my life, or am I being pulled like a puppet? Ask yourself the same, because not choosing is also a choice. It is the worst one. It leaves you wandering. Think of it like sailing. A ship without a course will always be carried by the strongest current, sometimes into safe harbors, often into rocks. But a captain with even a crude map, even if forced to adjust by storms, still moves with intention. So too with us. Your plan doesn't need perfection. It needs presence. A man I once knew lived years without deciding. He worked jobs others told him to take, dated women others approved of, moved to cities that promised prestige. He was admired but empty. Then one day, exhausted, he sat alone and wrote 1 page. What do I want one day of my life to look like? Not 10 years, not 5, just one day. He wrote, "Wake early, read something that sharpens the mind, move the body, eat without rush, speak with honesty, sleep without regret." That page became his anchor. It didn't erase struggle, but it gave his choices weight. Slowly, he began to live that page. And for the first time, he was steering. Here lies the lesson. Planning is not about imprisoning yourself. It is about freedom. When you choose with clarity, you are less vulnerable to being dragged by others' demands. When you decide, you reclaim hours that would otherwise be stolen. Seneca warned, "If you do not know to which port you sail, no wind is favorable." Think about that. Even the strongest gust of luck cannot help a ship that drifts aimlessly. But even the faintest breeze will move the vessel that has raised its sails toward a chosen star. So, take this challenge. Tonight, write not a grand plan, but a simple map for tomorrow. Decide the hour you rise. Decide one act of strength. Decide one act of stillness. Decide one step that honors your own path rather than someone else's script. These choices, repeated, carve the road that belongs to you, and when life changes, as it always will, adjust. The map is not carved in stone. It is alive, like you. What mattered last year may not matter now. That is not failure. That is growth. The real failure is refusing to choose at all. So ask yourself, whose reins are you holding? Your own, or those handed to you by family, society, fear? And if the answer shames you, let that shame ignite courage. Because clarity belongs not to the one who never stumbles, but to the one who dares to take the first step with intention. From here, remember, the man without a plan is a prisoner of chance. The man who chooses, even imperfectly, already begins to live free. And once you've chosen your path, the next question rises. How do you protect your energy for that road, rather than scattering it on what was never yours? That is the doorway we now approach. Advancing to the 6th chapter, let us step into the quiet battlefield inside your own mind. Picture yourself lying awake at night, staring at the ceiling. Thoughts race, scenarios loop, tomorrow's traffic, what someone might say, whether the meeting will go well. You try to control 1,000 futures, yet the night keeps slipping away, leaving you drained before the morning even begins. You fought shadows, and you lost. Here's the truth. Exhaustion often comes not from what you did, but from what you tried to control and never could. It is like throwing punches into water. The harder you strike, the weaker you become, and the shape never changes. This is how most people live, pouring strength into battles that exist only in imagination. Epictetus, sharp as ever, gave us the dividing line. Some things are up to us, and some are not. Confuse the two, and you will suffer. It sounds simple, almost too simple, until you notice how often you blur the boundary. You rehearse arguments that never happen. You suffer insults that were never spoken. You try to manage weather, moods, outcomes, as if anxiety were a lever that moves the world. Marcus Aurelius echoed the same warning. If something external afflicts you, the pain does not come from the thing itself, but from your judgment about it. And that judgment you can erase right now. That is the shield. The storm is not the problem, it is the story you tell yourself about the storm. Let's make it vivid. A client walks into your office furious. Their voice rises, their face hardens. You don't control how they woke up, what fight they had at home, what pain they carried in, but you do control the space between their words and your reply. Feed their fire, and you burn with them. Hold steady, and you stay whole. One choice changes the entire day. Or think of the countless hours we replay mistakes. You misspoke in a meeting. The silence afterward felt like knives. That night, you torture yourself, replaying every angle, convincing yourself everyone sees you as incompetent, yet by morning, no one else remembers. You burned yourself on yesterday's ashes while the world had already moved on. So how do we shift? Start with a simple practice. Take a sheet of paper, divide it in two. On one side, write what is yours: effort, attitude, discipline, honesty. On the other, write what is not: traffic, gossip, weather, someone's opinion. Keep that page close. Each time anxiety rises, ask, which column does this belong to? And if it falls in the second, drop it. Not yours. Not now. A man I once met lived decades in the wrong column. He blamed markets, blamed bosses, blamed fate. Nothing changed until one day, after yet another sleepless night, he whispered to himself, "What can I do today that no one else can stop?" The list was short. His preparation, his focus, his integrity. He began there. Slowly, his energy returned. He stopped wasting it on locked doors and started building where the keys were already in his hand. Science confirms what the Stoics knew. Psychologists call it locus of control. People who focus on what they can influence carry less anxiety, more resilience, greater calm. Those who scatter their energy on luck or others' choices spiral into helplessness. Philosophy and research arrive at the same door. Peace belongs to those who know what is theirs. And yet, knowing is not enough. You must act. When the mind spirals, move your body. Take a walk, change the room, clean a drawer. Julia Pascal, a modern psychologist, put it perfectly. Less rum, more run. In other words, stop drowning in thought and return to movement. For when the body shifts, the mind loosens its grip. This, too, is training. Each time you catch yourself clutching the uncontrollable, breathe and repeat. This is not up to me. Then pivot to what is. Make the call. Write the page. Practice the skill. Lift the weight. Small, concrete steps. The act of redirecting is itself a victory. Every time you do, you reclaim energy that was leaking away into fantasies and fears. Seneca once wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." Carry that sentence like a sword. When your thoughts begin to torment you, ask, is this real or imagined? If it is real, act. If it is imagined, release it. Both paths lead to peace. Here is where the lesson sharpens. Wasting energy on the uncontrollable does more than exhaust you. It robs you of the strength needed for what truly matters. You cannot build, create, or love when your fire is already spent on illusions. Protect your fire. Guard it fiercely. Let it burn only where it can give light. So, tonight, ask yourself, how much of today's exhaustion came from what was never yours to carry? And dare to put it down. Write in your journal the one thing you will stop trying to control tomorrow. Just one. The act of naming it is the act of loosening its chain. From here, remember, clarity is power. And the clearer you are about what is yours, the stronger you become. Because the man who masters this division cannot be broken by storms, he knows which winds to sail and which to let pass. And once your energy is freed from illusions, you are ready for the next demand. To love without chains, to give without keeping score, to discover a fullness no disappointment can take away. That, my friend, is where the path now leads. Up to this point, we have been sharpening the blade, principles hammered into habits, truths shaped into daily strategies. But a sharpened blade, unused, will rust. The step ahead is not just to hold wisdom within, but to let it echo outward into the way we speak, the way we love, the way we face loss and possibility. This is where philosophy ceases to be a private shield and becomes a craft of building, a life that breathes strength into everything it touches. What follows is not theory, not practice alone, but the fruit of practice, what it gives back, what it awakens, how it transforms both you and those around you. Entering this final stretch, imagine standing at the edge of a long road. Behind you are scars, lessons, truths hard won. Ahead lies the question, will you build with what you've learned, or let it fade like sand, slipping through your fingers. This is where philosophy demands more than thought. It demands transformation. Think of a blacksmith. He heats iron, hammers it, cools it, hammers again. Each strike seems destructive, but in truth, each blow forges strength. Life has struck you the same way. Every meditation you have carried about detachment, clarity, courage and discipline was a hammer on the raw iron of your character. Now the question becomes, what will you shape with it? Will you remain only metal struck and scarred? Or will you take form as something enduring, something useful, something beautiful in its strength? Epictetus warned us, philosophy that never leaves the tongue becomes theatre. To know the words without living them is like a soldier polishing his armor but never stepping onto the field. The shine impresses no one when the first arrow comes. At this stage, you're asked not to polish, but to wield, to live. Here's where an image from daily life makes it plain. A woman spends months reading about health, memorizing diets, stacking recipe books on her shelf. She can tell you the benefits of each food, but her body does not change. Another woman, with far less knowledge, laces her shoes each morning and walks. Over weeks, she grows stronger, lighter, steadier. Knowledge untouched is weight. Knowledge applied becomes movement. The Stoics knew this with brutal clarity. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, rose each dawn into battles and burdens we can hardly imagine. Yet, in his journal, he never praised himself for knowing philosophy. He asked himself, how will I live it today? Will I meet anger with calm? Will I meet pain with dignity? Will I meet fortune without arrogance? That was his forge. That is ours. From here, ask yourself the sharper question. Where in your life have you collected wisdom without practice? Is it in patience, where you know you should breathe but still lash out? Is it in discipline, where you know you should begin but still wait for perfect conditions? Is it in honesty, where you know the truth but keep silent out of fear? Write it down. Be ruthless. The gap between knowing and doing is the true battlefield. Let me tell you about a craftsman I once knew. He carved wood for decades, his hands rough, his back bent. When asked his secret, he said quietly, "I never let a day pass without leaving a mark on the wood. Not one day." He knew that one stroke a day, multiplied by years, builds a cathedral. He did not speak of inspiration. He did not wait for applause. He simply struck the wood every day. That was his philosophy alive. Seneca left us the same command. Philosophy teaches us to act, not to speak. These words carry weight because they strip away illusion. To speak is easy, to act is rare. And the rarest act of all is to align your daily movements with the principles you claim to believe. Imagine if each decision, however small, carried the weight of virtue behind it. Imagine if every word you spoke was sifted through justice, self-control, courage, wisdom. Would your days not change shape entirely? This is where the ordinary becomes sacred. Drinking a cup of water with gratitude, answering a harsh word with calm, closing your day by reflecting, even on a single step taken in integrity. These are not minor gestures. They are bricks. They are the wall that no chaos can collapse. And here is the inspiration buried in this demand. You do not need to transform overnight. You do not need to conquer everything at once. You need only to refuse the emptiness of theory, to strike the iron once today, to carve the wood once today, to live even one sentence of philosophy in the flesh, not only in the mind. At this stage, understand this. Regret is born not from ignorance, but from inaction. Failure leaves scars, yes, but scars prove you lived. Regret leaves nothing but blank pages. And if you have walked this journey so far, you now hold the pen. Write with it, even if the strokes are uneven, even if the letters tremble. Action is the ink. So let us close this chapter with a vow: to stop being spectators of our own wisdom, to stop reciting meditations like poems on the wall and start breathing them into our blood. From this moment forward, let every truth you have learned demand a step, however small, in its direction. Because the man who acts from virtue, even in tiny steps, builds a fortress of peace. And from here, we step deeper still toward the next lesson, where the forge of philosophy will be tested not only in solitude, but in the way we face others, in love, in honesty, in the bonds that reveal who we truly are. Here's where the road bends again and the horizon stretches wide. Imagine you've climbed a mountain after hours of strain, only to realize the summit is not the end. It's a vantage point. From here, you can see the valleys below, the winding paths, the places you stumbled, and the beauty you almost missed. That moment teaches a truth few dare to accept. Strength is not just in reaching the peak, but in how you descend, how you carry what you've seen back into the world. Now imagine carrying that vision into your daily life. Every person you meet, every word you speak becomes part of the descent. Will you return hardened, or will you return with softness, able to share what you've learned without needing recognition? Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." That line is a sword, cutting through excuses, stripping away pretension. It reminds us that philosophy, once tasted at the summit, must be embodied in the valley. To live is not to argue about virtue, but to practice it, quietly, steadily, until it shapes the way you breathe. Think of a craftsman in a small workshop. Day after day, he carves wood, polishes stone, weaves threads. There is no crowd watching, no medals, no applause. Yet in every small act, he leaves a mark of mastery. Over time, his craft speaks louder than any speech about dedication. This is how Stoic wisdom must operate, not as lofty ideas we discuss, but as invisible threads woven into how we carry ourselves at work, in love, in silence, in struggle. But here is the challenge. The descent is where most falter. On the climb, the fight keeps you sharp. The summit gives you clarity, but the return, the slow, daily steps of applying what you've seen, feels ordinary. It lacks drama. And yet, this is the proving ground. Epictetus warned, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it." To descend with wisdom is to choose patience when frustration bites, to speak truth when silence would be easier, to forgive when resentment promises false comfort. Picture a soldier returning from war. On the battlefield, courage was demanded every second. At home, courage takes a different form. It is in listening to his child's fears, in waking up to face another day of ordinary struggles without seeking chaos to feel alive. The return requires a gentler bravery, the bravery of restraint, of presence, of consistency. That is what transformation looks like. Not a single glorious moment, but 1,000 quiet ones. Seneca said, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, that is poor." When you descend with this wisdom, you stop measuring your life by applause or possessions. You begin to measure by integrity, by whether your actions align with the truths you've seen. You stop asking, "Did they notice me?" and start asking, "Was I true to myself today?" That shift changes everything. Consider the story of a teacher who spent decades in a small town. No fame, no headlines, His students went on to build lives of depth and dignity, carrying with them lessons of discipline, honesty, resilience. At his funeral, hundreds gathered, not because he had been celebrated by the world, but because he had returned from his own summit each day with the gift of presence. That is what living philosophy looks like. It leaves traces not in books or speeches, but in the souls it touches. And here lies the heart of this second movement. To recognize that philosophy is not about escaping the world, but about returning to it differently, to descend with your eyes still open, your spirit still steady, your heart still capable of giving without demand. The summit gave you vision. The return tests whether you can live it. So I ask you now, in your descent, what are you carrying back? Bitterness or wisdom? Isolation or presence? Excuses or quiet strength? Remember this, clarity is not one to be hoarded, it is one to be lived. And as we move forward, hold this image close. You, walking back into the ordinary carrying extraordinary truth. For the descent, my friend, is not the end of the journey. It is where the journey finally begins to shape the world. If these words resonate, write just one word in the comments, wisdom. Let it be your marker that you walk with open eyes. And if you wish to keep walking this road together, subscribe so the next lesson finds you when you need it most. Advancing to the third chapter, picture this scene. The noise of the world has settled for a moment, and you stand in a quiet room where nothing distracts you but your own reflection. The mirror stares back, not with vanity, but with a question. Have you been living as yourself, or as the echo of other people's expectations? That question burns, because it is not about appearance, it is about essence. So many live behind masks. A mask for family, a mask for colleagues, a mask for friends. Each one polished, each one tailored, until eventually the face beneath is forgotten. And yet, when silence comes, when you are stripped of the roles and applause, the mask cannot breathe for you. Only the self you abandoned waits there, hungry, neglected, asking why you chose the comfort of pretending over the rawness of truth. Epictetus warned us, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. Simple words, yet sharp as a blade. They cut through the layers of performance we accumulate, for if you do not declare to yourself who you truly are, the world will happily declare it for you. And the world, my friend, does not always choose with kindness. Now imagine this. A man spends his life in a career chosen for him. His parents valued stability, society praised the title, and so he wore that mask. On the outside, he was successful. Inside, a slow erosion was taking place. Every day he traded authenticity for approval, and though he was applauded, he grew emptier with each cheer. Until one day, at the height of his career, he could not remember what he loved or who he was. The applause had deafened him to his own voice. This is the tragedy of masks. They can earn recognition, but they starve the soul. Seneca put it starkly. It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it. And what greater waste than to spend a life on stage, performing a role that was never yours to begin with. The mask may win you moments of safety, but the cost is always the same: regret. Here's the paradox. Authenticity demands courage, but it also gives freedom. When you act from your own center, when your yes and no come from your values rather than someone else's script, you no longer fear exposure. There is nothing to expose. What you are within is what you are without. No split, no disguise. That is integrity, and integrity is unshakable. Think of Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, sitting at his desk in the flickering light of a lamp, writing to himself words no one else was meant to read, reminders of humility, of service, of mortality. He wore the crown of the most powerful man alive, but in those pages he stripped it off. He wrote as a human being, face to face with himself. That is the Stoic way, not to deny the roles you play, but to ensure the role never devours the man. At this stage, you may wonder, how does one begin to strip away the mask without tearing apart the life already built around it? The answer is not sudden rebellion. It is small, daily acts of truth. Speak honestly when it would be easier to nod. Admit weakness when it would be easier to hide. Pursue a quiet passion even if no one else applauds. Each act is like chiseling stone, revealing a figure that has always been beneath the marble. And yes, there will be risk. Some will resist your truth because it unmasks their own pretenses. Some relationships may falter, but better to lose what was never truly yours than to keep living bound in performance. Real bonds, forged in honesty, will remain, and in their presence you will finally breathe. Here's where the shift becomes powerful. Once you live without the weight of masks, you also stop demanding them from others. You grant them the space to show up real, flawed, unpolished, and suddenly life gains texture. Conversations deepen, love becomes freer, friendship becomes richer, because what is authentic in you recognizes and welcomes what is authentic in them. From here, let us bring it back to a simple but piercing truth. A mask can protect, but only for a while. The world may admire it, but you will always know the difference. And when the end comes, as it comes for all, the applause will fade, the roles will dissolve, and only the unmasked self will remain. Better to meet that self as a friend than as a stranger. So, I leave you with this question. What mask have you worn for too long, and what would it feel like to finally set it down? Because once you do, life does not end in loss, it begins in freedom. And that freedom, as Epictetus taught, is the only true wealth. Entering the 4th chapter, imagine this: a torch being passed from one hand to another, the flame trembling for a moment, then catching strong. This is how wisdom works when it is shared. It is not diminished by the giving, it multiplies. But too often we hoard our light, afraid it might flicker out if exposed, and so we keep our strength locked inside, forgetting that resilience, like fire, is meant to warm more than the one who holds it. Let's pause here. What is the point of carrying clarity if it never softens another's confusion? What is the worth of endurance if it never inspires someone who feels they cannot endure? Philosophy, my friend, is not a trophy to display. It is a current. It flows through us and beyond us, shaping the lives we touch. Epictetus spoke to this when he reminded his students, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it." To embody is to live in such a way that your presence itself becomes instruction. Not lectures, not endless words. Presence. The quiet steadiness of someone who no longer panics at storms, who no longer wastes energy on what he cannot control. People see it, and without you teaching, they begin to learn. Now, picture a soldier returning from battle. He does not need to boast of courage. His scars speak louder than words. The way he walks, the way he carries silence into the room, becomes its own form of teaching. This is how you and I must think of philosophy, not as ideas we repeat to others, but as strength etched into our actions, visible to anyone who looks closely. At this stage, a story comes to mind. There was a teacher in Athens who never called himself wise, never claimed mastery. Instead, he lived simply, treating every person with dignity, whether slave or citizen. One day, a young man asked him, "Why do people follow you when you never command them?" The teacher smiled and replied, "Because I am the same man in the dark as I am in the light. That is the secret. Consistency. A life unmasked. Marcus Aurelius echoed this when he wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one, simple, blunt, and impossible to ignore." The world does not need more definitions of strength. It needs examples. The kind you provide when you choose patience over anger, when you choose integrity over gain, when you choose courage over comfort. These choices, repeated quietly, build a presence stronger than any speech. But here's where the test sharpens. To embody philosophy means you cannot hide behind the excuse of knowing better while living smaller. Knowledge without action becomes hypocrisy, and hypocrisy rots the spirit faster than ignorance. If you speak of detachment but crumble at every insult people see. If you praise discipline but let distraction rule you, people see. You may fool others for a while, but you never fool yourself. And that inner dissonance, knowing you betray what you profess, will gnaw at you until you decide to align word and deed. Let's make this tangible. Imagine you've been working at a place where gossip runs wild. Everyone criticizes the absent. Everyone sharpens knives behind backs. You know better. You've read Epictetus. You've promised yourself not to waste breath on slander. Yet the moment comes, someone leans toward you with a grin and a secret. Do you join just to fit in? Or do you quietly redirect, refusing to add to the fire? One choice is philosophy embodied. The other is philosophy betrayed. That moment is your battlefield, and the victory, though invisible, will be etched in your character. From here we realize something essential. When you embody philosophy, you not only free yourself, you become a mirror. People who meet you will see themselves more clearly. Some may be inspired, others may be uncomfortable, but all will know they've encountered something rare. A human being who actually lives what he claims to believe. Seneca said, "Long is the way by precepts, short and effective by examples." We forget this in the age of endless words, but think of the people who shaped you most. Was it their speeches or their lives? The parent who endured hardship without bitterness, the friend who stood by you when it was costly, the mentor who refused to cut corners even when no one was watching. Their presence planted seeds in you, seeds that now grow into strength. Here's where it all converges. To embody philosophy is not about perfection. It is about practice made visible. The stumble is part of the path. The scar is part of the teaching. You will falter. You will fall. But if you rise again, calmly, steadily, the lesson will be stronger than if you had never fallen at all. For resilience shines brighter when tested. So let me ask you, in your daily life, what flame are you carrying, and who is watching it flicker into strength? Don't underestimate the quiet influence of a steady heart. Someone, somewhere, will hold on because they saw you hold on. Someone, somewhere, will resist despair because they saw you endure. This is not vanity, it is responsibility, the kind that transforms private strength into public light. As we close this chapter, carry this image. Your life as a torch, not hidden, not flaunted, but burning steadily through both calm and storm. And as you walk, that flame touches others without effort, without demand. That is the true legacy of Stoicism. Not the words you leave behind, but the life you live in plain sight. And so, let us advance. For there is still more to be built, more fruit to be tasted from the tree of discipline and clarity. What follows will ask even more of you, not only to embody philosophy, but to let it shape the way you face loss, love, and the final boundaries of life itself. At this stage, imagine the weight of a clock ticking in a silent room. Each tick is not noise, it is a reminder. Time is not waiting for you. It moves with or without your consent, and one day its hand will land on the final second of your life. This is not morbid, it is medicine. For nothing clarifies what matters like remembering that nothing lasts forever. Look at the world around you. The song that once moved you to tears becomes background noise after 100 listens. The friendship that once felt unbreakable sometimes fades into a memory. The strength of your own body, too, shifts with the years. Everything is in flux, yet we live as though permanence were promised, clinging to people, possessions, and moments as if our grip could stop the wheel of time. Epictetus gave us the line that burns through denial. Never say of anything, "I have lost it," but rather, "I have returned it." He understood that all we hold, health, loved ones, status, even life itself, was never truly ours. It was lent, and one day it will be called back. The question is not whether it goes. The question is how we respond when it does. Let me tell you the story of Adrian, a chef whose sense of taste was so sharp it made him legendary. Critics adored him, crowds lined up at his door. He thought his gift eternal. Then one morning, a car accident tore that gift away. His tongue, once precise as a violin, dulled to silence. Imagine the abyss. The talent that defined him, gone. For months he drowned in despair. But slowly he realized something profound. His skill was not just in tasting, it was in teaching, in shaping others. And so he passed the torch. His students became his legacy. What seemed like an ending became a new beginning. This is the lesson. Nothing endures unchanged. Not your triumphs, not your pains, not your youth, not your grief. Everything shifts. Seneca pressed this truth hard. What fortune has made yours is not your own. He said it not to steal hope, but to free us. For when you understand that everything is borrowed, you stop clutching so tightly, you start savoring instead. Here's a practice. Drink your morning coffee as if it were your last, not in sadness, but in depth. Hear the sound of laughter and treasure it, even if it never comes again. When something ends, instead of groaning, "It's over," whisper, "How fortunate I was to have it." Gratitude instead of grief. Presence instead of panic. That shift alone rewires the soul. Think of the attachments that chain us. A man pins all his joy on one career. When it falters, his identity collapses. A woman builds her entire world around one relationship. When it ends, she feels not just grief, but annihilation. This is the danger of building your house on a single pillar. Diversify your joys. Plant seeds in many soils. Friendships, learning, health, creativity, service. That way, when one branch breaks, the tree still stands. Even the small acts of letting go prepare us. Give away a possession before it clings too deeply. Take a different route to remind yourself the old one is not essential. Release clothes you no longer wear. These are rehearsals, and when life delivers its inevitable blows, the death of a parent, the fading of youth, the loss of status, you are not destroyed. You are seasoned. You are ready. Marcus Aurelius, emperor yet mortal, wrote in his meditations each dawn, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." He did not write this to depress himself. He wrote it to sharpen his sight, to remind himself that each encounter, each act, each word was not disposable, but sacred. The ordinary becomes extraordinary when you remember it might not come again. So let me ask you directly, what have you been gripping so tightly that its absence would shatter you? And what if instead you learn to hold it with open hands, grateful while it is here, graceful when it goes? That is freedom. For the one who accepts impermanence cannot be robbed. He knows from the start that every gift comes with an end, and in that knowing, he learns to love without fear, to live without hoarding, to grieve without breaking. The clock ticks on, not as an enemy, as a teacher. And when the final tick arrives, the man who has lived this way does not claw at life in terror. He nods, steady, and says, "I have returned what was lent." From here, we step into the final chapter of this movement, where the deepest fear of all is faced, not with trembling, but with clarity, the fear not of death, but of never having truly lived. That, my friend, is the door we now approach. Moving into this final chapter, imagine lying at the end of your days. The room is quiet. The noise of ambition, comparison, and fear has faded. What remains are the words circling your mind. I tried, or I could have. Which will it be? That single difference marks the line between a life lived fully and one half lived in hesitation. Regret weighs more than failure. Failure fades. Regret lingers. Think of that nurse, Bronnie Ware, who cared for the dying and recorded their last confessions. The most common regret was not mistakes, not losses. It was this: I wish I had lived a life true to myself, not the one others expected. That sentence stings because it reveals how easily we surrender our one chance at living to fear, comfort, or approval. Epictetus pierced this illusion with a line sharp as a spear. It is not death that a man should fear, but never beginning to live. Death is inevitable. Life, strangely, is optional. Too many skip it, postponing it with excuses, waiting for the perfect moment that never comes. Picture the ordinary tragedies. The business idea left in a drawer because the timing wasn't right. The trip postponed until there was more money, more certainty, until it never happened. The words of love swallowed to avoid awkwardness until the chance was gone forever. These seem small in the moment, but each delay compounds. Regret collects interest, and the bill comes due at the end, heavier than any failure could ever be. Now imagine the other path, the one where you dared. You launched the project and it stumbled. You confessed your feelings and they weren't returned. You traveled and it rained every day. But you lived. You wrote a story with scars, not with silence. That story, however imperfect, would let you rest easy when the last chapter closes. Seneca reminded us, it is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it. Wasted time is not just hours lost, it is life unlived. Every moment you trade for fear or hesitation is a piece of yourself you'll never recover. The courage to act, even clumsily, is the only antidote. Here's a practice. Each morning, ask, do I prefer the discomfort of trying or the lifelong weight of wondering? That question slices through excuses, and if the answer is unclear, add a touch of humor. Ask yourself, what would Epictetus do? Would he wait for perfect conditions, or would he act from virtue with what is at hand? You already know. He would choose the present, give his best, and sleep in peace, knowing he lived aligned with his values. Think of the man who spends his life drawing blueprints but never builds. At his death, he leaves behind rolls of paper, not houses, not bridges, just sketches of what could have been. Then think of the man who built even one modest home, imperfect, weathered, but real. Generations live in it. Which life carries weight? Which life honors existence? Failure bruises but teaches, regret chains and teaches nothing, and worst of all, it is self-made. Marcus Aurelius, facing his own mortality daily, reminded himself, you could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. He lived as if each act were his last. Imagine carrying that discipline. Would you still waste time on petty arguments? Would you still postpone dreams? Would you still withhold words of love, kindness, or truth? Or would you begin to live, not tomorrow, not someday, but today? Let me tell you this. I once met a man who dreamed of writing. He spoke of it often with fire in his eyes. Years passed. His notebooks stayed blank. When illness came, he whispered bitterly, "Now it's too late." That bitterness was heavier than death. For death ends life, but regret poisons it. So here is the challenge. Stop waiting. Speak the truth you have held back. Start the project you have postponed. Take the trip. Say the words. Live not perfectly but fully, because perfection is an illusion, but action is real, and reality, however flawed, will always outweigh fantasy. At this closing moment, carry with you the essence of everything the Stoics taught. Detachment, clarity, discipline, courage, all of it converges here. Life is honored not in daydreaming, but in action, not in "I could have," but in "I did." So ask yourself tonight, when the final page turns, what story will remain? One of excuses and silence, or one of scars and strength? The choice is yours.